Chad Hasty Show, News Talk, 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. We go to the phones. Joining us, Republican strategist Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great, Chad. Good morning. How are you?
Doing great. An interesting weekend news-wise, as on Friday we had the, document reveal behind Cohen, the recommendations of charges for Michael Cohen, and then some James Comey news as well. This all cascading into Democrats taking either to social media or going on television and really talking about the impeachment of Donald Trump. And even Adam Schiff, I think, over the weekend said, we can't rule out that Donald Trump may go to jail at some point. What's all behind this? What's going on? Walk us through some of this.
Yeah, obviously the Mueller inquiry has been moving forward. You have the Southern District of New York that's also doing its own probe, which is on a separate track. The documents that were released on Friday appeared to be more serious from the Southern District of New York than they did from the Mueller inquiry. Look, this is building, and we still have some major questions that we don't know the answer to. I think the most significant development on Friday is the Michael Cohen point that is made in the Southern District of New York filing, that he says he was directed by, quote, candidate one, which is Donald Trump, to make to make the payment to the mistress, which appears to be a campaign finance violation. Now, campaign finance violations are almost never handled criminally. They're almost always handled civilly. And so, obviously Cohen's credibility is a huge question mark. You would presume that Southern District of New York would not just take his word and put it into a filing, that they would have independent verification of that in some way. So we have to see where it goes. It may not be collusion ultimately that is the result of all this. It may be a campaign finance violation, and this kind of goes back to the argument that a lot of people on both sides of the aisle have made, which is that special counsels generally, just go on and on and on, and they ultimately end up in a place very different than why they were created at the very beginning.
Yeah. All right. So let's just say there is a campaign finance violation. Is that something to impeach a president, whether it's Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter? Is that something to impeach a president over?
Presidential campaigns on both sides of the aisle always have campaign violations. In this case, a lot of people have made the argument that this is at a different level in terms of the importance of it, the fact that it was in the closing days of the campaign, the fact that it was a very close election. I'm really not sympathetic to that argument. If someone wants to make an explosive allegation against you and you're running for office, are you not supposed to try to handle that allegation in the closing days? You're just supposed to sit there and take it. I don't know. If those are the new rules, it's really going to be hard, I think, to get people to run for office because people can always make allegations against you. Now, obviously, with Donald Trump's past, these allegations were pretty credible. But look, I think ultimately what appears to have happened here is, he didn't make the payment with his own funds. It sounds like Cohen did that, and perhaps he was going to be reimbursed, or perhaps he was. We don't know yet. And honestly, if Trump had just made the payment and disclosed it at the time, there would be no campaign finance violation. So look, I don't think campaign finance violations at this level would meet the threshold of impeachment. But Democrats up on Capitol Hill, who are on the Sunday shows over the weekend, including the incoming House Judiciary Committee chairman, said he does believe it's impeachable. So we'll see. Ultimately, impeachment is a question that Congress determines, and the House considers whether impeachment is the appropriate remedy, and then the Senate determines what the appropriate punishment is.
I would just think, we've heard numerous interviews since the whole Bill Clinton impeachment, and recently Republicans have said it was a mistake, that it cost them dearly, that they never should have moved forward with impeachment of Bill Clinton. I would think that the Democrats going from Russian collusion to campaign finance violation, and that's why we're going to impeach Donald Trump, I would think the average voter out there would say, yeah, that's not good enough. That's a load. You can't do that. I think it would be a disaster for the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, I think based on what we know today, I would probably agree with that. I also think that this is not the end point, right? It's pretty clear that this is heading towards something else. And in fact, Andrew McCarthy, former assistant U.S. attorney, someone who's I think been really pretty ahead of the curve. He's a Fox News analyst, writes for National Review, wrote a really kind of sober column for FoxNews.com over the weekend, making the argument that he believes the Southern District of New York is going to indict the president, or at least intends to. Now, there's a huge question as to whether a sitting president can be indicted. The guidelines in the Department of Justice say that you cannot indict a sitting president, and then you get into the question of statute of limitations, and the statute of limitations on campaign finance violations are 5 years. So obviously, if Trump were reelected, he would be beyond that. If he wasn't reelected, he would not be beyond that. So, look, Chad, I think the reality is this thing got more serious on Friday. I think it's probably making it more challenging for the president to find a chief of staff who wants to work for the next 2 years through this mess. But I also think that we don't know where it's headed. We don't know what the final facts are. We don't know what Mueller will do. We don't know if there will be additional indictments and who might be indicted. So I don't think we're there yet. And I think to your point, I think a lot of people probably do look at this and say impeachment is for high crimes and misdemeanors. If he indeed directed Cohen to make a payment to someone who was making an allegation against him in the closing days of the campaign, that doesn't seem to me to meet the threshold of high crimes and misdemeanors. I mean, the Obama campaign had $2 million in contributions that were above the limit. They received the largest fine in the history of the FEC. It was a six-figure fine. A lot of people on Twitter have been telling me that these two things are not the same, that the Trump thing is far more serious. I don't know. That'll be up to Congress to decide. But obviously, this thing got more serious on Friday.
Yeah. All right, Matt, I appreciate you joining us today. Tell folks about your podcast and your newsletter, how they can sign up for your newsletter.
Yeah, the podcast is called Mac on Politics. It's in iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, MacOnPoliticsPodcast.com. Most recent episode is with Steve Scalise, the House Majority Whip from Louisiana who survived an assassination attempt last year. We have a really interesting conversation, and the newsletter is called Must Read Texas. We take all the news from around Texas, deliver it to your inbox every weekday morning. Over 3,000 Texans are subscribers, including the host, I believe. You can sign up for a 1-week free trial at mustreadtexas.com.
Very nice. Matt, as always, appreciate your time, and we'll visit with you next week.
Sounds good. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Matt. That's Matt Mackowiak.